Hello, coders. Go back to this view. Hello, coders. Hope everyone's doing well. It's Thursday evening. It is time for Code School. I've been stood up too much today. I'm got a bit of a backache, so bear with me. Today we're going to be doing CSS. The very first CSS tutorial that I've ever done on any How to Code Well platform, be it Twitch or YouTube. Now this is only an hour-long stream, and there is many things to talk about with CSS. CSS is probably one of the most complicated areas in the three-pronged web development plethora that you need to study. So HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. JavaScript is probably actually one of the higher complicated jobbies. It really depends on where you take it, but CSS will take something from something that looks really basic to something that looks really, really fancy. It is the difference between it's like the difference between a sports car and a Ford Mondeo, right? The engine underneath, the mechanics, the wheels, the steering wheel, that's all the same across all the cars. It's the CSS that makes it fancy. Fancy. Cascading style sheets. CSS is a style sheet language used to describe the presentation of a document written in HTML or XML, including XML dialects such as SVG, MathML, or XHTML. CSS describes how elements should be rendered on screen, paper, in speech, or in other media. Okay, so please don't think CSS is just limited to the web, because it's not. You know, you can create documents in CSS in the sense you can make printable documents in CSS, right? I'm reading from here, so I will put this in the show notes. This is developer.mozilla.org, and I'll put that down in here, like so. Let me just turn the music down a wee bit. There we go. Okay, so like I said, there's loads to cover with CSS. We're going to approach it like someone who has never done CSS before, doesn't know what CSS actually stands for. So we'll just focus on the bare minimum right now. So CSS is one of the core languages of the Open Web Standard, and is standardized across web browsers according to the W3C specification. Okay, so you can see how complicated it gets when you start talking about specifications. Developed in levels, CSS 1 is obsolete, CSS 2.1 is the recommendation, and CSS 3 is now split into smaller modules and is progressing on the standardized track. So the first thing to note here, CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets. The first thing to note here is that CSS isn't equal across browsers. Okay, so and back in the day when I was back ages ago when we had IE6, Netscape Navigator, and all that fun stuff, there was all sorts of different browser compatibility issues, far more than there are today, but there is still some today. Okay, so let's crack on and take a look at the basics, CSS basics. You can go into great depth here, great depth, but the CSS basics is a good start. So CSS, Cascading Style Sheets, is the code to use to style your web page. CSS Basics takes you through what you need to get started. So do check out this resource, because it's really super handy. So what is CSS really? First of all, it isn't really a programming language, all right? It's not a markup language either. It's a style sheet language. It's a language that describes the style of a document. This means that it lets you apply styles selectively to elements in HTML documents. Remember, when we did the HTML stuff, we were talking about elements and attributes. So this allows you to paint styles on those elements. Hey, Scaven Darth. Oh, sorry, I can't even see it. Slayer Darth. Hey, Slayer Darth. I'm doing well. I'm okay. I'm good. I'm good, thanks. I'm a little bit tired today. I've been up for too long. Okay, for example, to select all the paragraph elements on a HTML page and turn them red, you'd write this CSS. So you would have the element selector here. And then in the body of, between these braces, you would have the actual rules. The rules are essentially key value pairs, this being the key, this being the value. So we want all paragraphs, p tags, to have the color of red. Yeah, sorry about that, Slayer Duff. For some reason, my browser's really slow or small, or I'm stood quite far back. In fact, let me knock this up, because I think that folding at home banner is above my head, or on it. Okay, so in here we try it out. So we can see here that all of these paragraph tags are now red. Now this isn't paragraph. This here is a UL and LI. So we've altered these. Pictionary was great. Thank you very much. It was very, very good. We didn't use that Scribble.io game. We went old school, and we held up the pictures that we were drawing to the camera, and that worked fine. That was all right. It did mean that there was obviously one of us that couldn't do the game. They were the host, the quizmaster, we called them. So they were sending the messages through WhatsApp. That was quite fun. And we found like a Pictionary word generator on the internet where you can change the different difficulty levels. So we had 4 rounds, and it was getting progressively more difficult. That was fun. That was very fun. Very fun. So before I get into the code, I want to say that there's 4 different ways that you can create CSS. Okay, the first way is to do it in line. So this is writing CSS against the actual element itself. The second way is to do it in the actual page using style tags. The third way is to do it like this, where you can link to an external CSS document. So here we're linking to a file, styles.style.css. And the fourth way is to use JavaScript to manipulate the styles of the elements dynamically. So there's many ways to skin this cat. We're going to just go for the first few, where we are creating CSS. Well, in the page, I think is probably the easiest to start with. But if you are to link them, you need to do them within the head tags. So open your index.h. This is going through an example here. File and paste the following in the head, between the head and open and close tags. Okay, let's get back to the code here. So the code is, where's PHP Storm gone? Here we go. We're going to create a new lesson, and I'm going to create, so it's a folder. We're going to call this lesson 4. And what we'll do is we'll create ourselves an index.html file, much like we've done before. And I'm going to start by creating some paragraphs. So we're going to do a p tag. Let's do, this is the 4th lesson. And we are learning CSS. Okay. We're also going to have let's do a list, so UL li, because I want to play with the different types of selectors here. Yeah. I thought someone would pick that up. Yeah, so you can, if you want to, you can do so, but I highly don't recommend writing all your CSS in JavaScript. I know that some people do. CSS and JavaScript, in my opinion, should only be used when dealing with the dynamic properties such as synchronized heights, or to conditionally apply CSS classes. Do listen to what Slayer Darth is saying, because it's very sensible. Okay, so we're going to have apples, and we're going to have oranges, if I can spell it, and we're going to have pears, right? Do let me know if my music is too loud. I did notice that it was too quiet when I was playing the streams back, so I have increased the sound, the volume. Okay, so we've got these two elements here. We've got a p tag and a ul tag, and within the ul tag we've got these LIs. So let's create this. This is what we've got. This is the HTML page, and what I want to do is change this to be perhaps a different color. So let's go ahead and do that. Now we're going to do some styles in the actual head, but we're not going to create an external file yet. So we're going to use style tags, and we're going to start by saying that we want to select the p tag. So we have open and closed braces like so, curly braces, and within those curly braces you then apply the rules now, or the properties, and the properties have values. So for example, we're going to use color. Now please note that this is in American English, so color is actually spelt as COLOR without the U, which is fine. We're going to change that to red. Okay, so I mean, changing colors in CSS, in my opinion, is actually a tutorial in itself, because you can do you can use all sorts of different types of values. At the moment I'm just saying it's red, but I could, if I wanted to use hex codes, RGB values, RGBA values, all sorts of crazy things as well. So we're just going to go for red, and we're going to hit save, and then we're going to refresh this page, and you can see that this has now changed to red. Okay, so let's see if how I can apply a style to this. So this is a UL, but this is an LI. So if I was to change the color of the UL, it will also alter the child elements. So this is UL, and then this is the child. If I was to put in if I was to use the asterisk, so UL asterisk. So with CSS selectors, you can now go down the document object model. You can go down the chain of the elements. So if you were to think this would be the start, this would be root, and then this would be li here. So for instance, let's do UL, and let's change the color of that to be, say, blue, and then hit save, refresh. So this is all blue, but I can target certain li elements, and I can do this like so. If I did li, let's target the first one. So what I would do here, let's see if I can get to an example here, just so I've got something to show you. This is what I meant by the selector. So we got a p tag here, and then this is the property and the property value. But I can also call upon multiple elements like this, so p and li. Actually, let's go ahead and do that first up, right? So let's say I wanted both the p tag and the ul tag to be red. So what I would do, let's comment that out. Let's do li, like so. Okay, let's go back here, and then let's just refresh. So now we can see that that one style, that one rule has applied that to all of these elements. Sledarth has mentioned, yes, there's the colon first child, so you can actually pinpoint certain specific child elements. So first child or last child, and other bits and pieces too. You can also apply styles before and after certain elements as well. So let's say, for example, we did UL and then LI first child, like this, okay? First child of blue. So now we've applied the red to all of the elements. However, we've added this to be blue. The first child, the first LI child, the first child, which is LI of UL. If I wanted to change that, I could also do, say, let's say I wanted to change the last child, then that would be, you guessed it, last child. Let's change that to be, I don't know, think of another color, red and blue and green. There we go. So now we've got blue, red, and green. The red is based on the style of the P tag and the LIs, and then we've applied these two specific styles to the first and last child. If I was to add another child into here, so let's say, for example, we had LI and think of another fruit. My mind has gone absolutely blank. We've done apples, we've done oranges, we've done pears, kiwi, orange. No, we've got orange. I can't spell it. Pomegranate. Okay, let's do pomegranate. There we go. Okay, so we now have 4 elements in here. So this is the first child and this is the last child. So let's hit save and then go back into here. Let's refresh the page. Now we have these two as red. Okay, so let's do a quick recap. If I can find the code. There we go. So what we've done here is we've created a style tag within the head tag. Okay, and then within the style tag, we are now creating rules against the certain elements. The elements that we have here is a P tag, and then we have a UL tag with these 4 LIs as child elements of the UL. Here we're setting that both P and LI elements must have a color of red. However, here we've got UL, LI, first child. We're now targeting the first child, which is this one, and we're saying override this color red and change it to color blue. This one down here on line 15, we're doing the same thing but to the last child, overriding the red color and changing it to green. This is what's called cascading. We are cascading the rules down. Let's do this. What do you think will happen if I did that? Let's hit, oops, have I saved that? Yep. Refresh. Ah. Yes, sorry, because we are targeting, sorry. Ugh. My mind is, that's correct, because that's now UL, LI, sure. I think if I was to do, is that gonna, for some reason I thought that would have worked. Bear with me a second. Let's put it back. Right, okay. Okay, so it's cascading in the sense that it's LI is red, and then that overrides to blue, and then that overrides to green. Okay. So, let's say, for example, and because we're targeting the child elements, this becomes more of a priority. So let's go over to here a minute and scroll down. So you can see the different types of selectors. So you can, at the moment, I've been just using the name of the element. So the element itself being P, but we can also use the ID selector and the class selector as well. So this would be a class selector. So my class, so dot my class, and then this would be an ID. So my ID. I think what I could do, and then here's the pseudo class selector as I showed you before with the colons. We can also use attribute selectors too. So there's all sorts of ways that we can select different or target different specific parts of the code of the elements. Sorry, and then of course this is fonts and texts and so on and so on. What I'm going to do is we're going to copy over the form here, which is this one here. This is what we did last time. We're going to copy this over and we're going to paste it into here. This is the contact form. Oops, sorry. Let's paste that in. There we go. So this is what we did last time, right? And we're going to dress this up. If I was to load this up now, this is what it looks like. But we can dress this up. We've got lots of things to play with, lots of elements. We've got the submit button here, which validates, as we did last week. We've got a legend that we can change. We've got the elements themselves that can change. And I even believe, if I remember rightly, we've got div tags. Okay, so let's go ahead and do this. I'm going to do it in the head tag, like we've done before, and we'll style this up. Whoops. Let me, get rid of that. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is target the legends. So let's do legend. And we're going to make these legends have a font weight, and we're going to set these to be bold. Okay, let's refresh. There we go. Now all the legends are nice and bold. Let's see if we want. Let's see about coloring in, making a background for this. So let's do background color. Background hyphen color. Now there's loads of CSS rules that you can use. We're going to change this to be blue, and we're going to refresh the page. There we go. Now we've got a blue legend. Let's see if we can make the color, the actual font color, white. So we can do color here, and this time, instead of just typing in white, which is like so, we're going to use the hex code of white. So we can put in a hash symbol. That's what I was thinking of, and then we can do 1 2 3 4 5 6, and then a colon. Hit save, because this is the hex code for white. There we go. Now a quick little sort of snippet here, a little cheat, is that if you've got a hex code that has 3 characters, which are the same 3 characters as the last 3 characters, then you can get away with only supplying 3 characters. Cool. Cool. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to change the next thing we're going to do is change the field set, I think. Invalid and valid class names. Might be useful to explain to viewers what constitutes as an invalid and valid class name. Yeah. Okay, at the moment I'm just targeting elements, so we could create class names, couldn't we? Let's say, for example, we want to create, we've got 3 legends here, so I could create class names on the legends. Yes, such as class names that not being able to start with numbers. Gotcha. Okay, all right, so first of all, let's create a class. So this is an attribute, so class is equal to, and then we need to give it a name. I'll create a valid name first. So let's do my hyphen details, like so. And let's see. Let's do legend dot my details with a background color, and we'll set this one in this time to be black. Whoops. Hang on a minute. I haven't... Where have I put that class name? That's a field set. Sorry. This is what happens when you when you're tired. It's a legend. There we go. Okay, so here I've targeted this this element. This has a black background, whereas the others are blue. And this, again, is an example of the cascading effect, where I'm overriding this one at the top here. This was blue, now it's black, but notice that we still have a bold font color, font weight, sorry, and a white color. So bold and white here. So let's talk about an invalid class name, such as Slayer Darth has rightfully mentioned. So let's say, for example, I want to target this one here, this legend. Now, I mean, I could put in your details instead of my details, but let's say, for example, there is something else that we want to use, and that becomes invalid. So let's say, for example, we use numbers. So let's say, for example, this is 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's hit save. Need a drink. Let's copy that. 1, 2, 3, 4. Not really much to copy, to be honest. And let's do legend dot 1, 2, 3, 4 dot. Can you see 1, 2, 3, 4 here? Right. That little red line gives it all away. Let's see if we can copy this. So we go black, go here, and let's do this to be, I don't know, red. Okay. Let's hit save. Refresh the page. Now, notice nothing is working here. Like, this should be red. Let me just double check I've got this on the right. Yes, legend. Now, the reason why this doesn't work is that we're using numbers and we're not using normal letters. And if I was to hover over here, we get an unexpected token. It's an unexpected token because the CSS can't read this, because this is essentially invalid. To get around this, what you would do is, let's say, for example, as Slayer Darth has mentioned, that perhaps there's an error, right? So there's an error on the page, and you want to create a CSS class that represents a particular error code, say, for example, error 404. You would do something like this, error, and then you could possibly do 404 like this. Okay. You couldn't, however, do 404 because it needs to start with letters. So error -404. Let's just do this as an example. So error -404. So it's gone grey. It's still not particularly good. I wouldn't use. Oops, hang on. It's gone grey because it's not used. I wouldn't use numbers at all in my CSS classes. Not really, because it's too easy to get it wrong. But if I hit save now and refresh the page, that's now gone red. That's now gone red. There's other things that you shouldn't use, like special characters there as well. But doing CSS just as a number is just going to break it. I'll change this now to your details. Your details, but that's a good point, Slayer Darth. Yeah. And people get themselves in a bit of a knot when they do use numeric values as the start of a class name. And I've seen this because perhaps they've used some JavaScript that creates dynamic CSS and they aren't prefixing the numeric class names with any kind of letters. And essentially, it just creates meaningless code. So anyway, let's refresh the page. That should be as it was. This is now red. So the default legends are blue. So if I was to create a new legend, it would be blue with the white background. Okay. So we can also target inputs. Okay, so these are all inputs. We got an input here, we got an input there, and then we got these input for the checkboxes. And we can target specific ones. So if I went down to the elements down here, we can see that these are the input elements. So input ID, your name, type, and so forth. That's an input. This is an input. Text area isn't technically an input element as such. It's a text area element. But these are elements. These are inputs, sorry. So these checkboxes, that's what I'm looking for. And these have a type attribute of checkbox. Remember, if we went back to here, I think it was, yeah, attribute selector. That's what I'm going to show you now. So this is where, can you see img for image, and then src selects an image src, but not the image. So here what we're going to do is we're going to select the inputs that have a type of text, but not a checkbox. So let's try that out. So let's do input. And first of all, I'll do all of them, right? So first of all, I'll do inputs, and I'll give them a border of 1 pixel, solid, and let's do 1, 2, 3 for black. And let's bump this up to 2 pixels actually. Let's hit save. What I've done here is I've actually combined 3 CSS classes or rules in one. So 1, 2, and 3. So let's hit, let's refresh wherever the page is gone. Here we go. So that's bold, or sorry, that's black with a border, that's black with a border. This is black with a border as well. Checkboxes don't actually have that capability. What else could I use on a checkbox? Can I use padding? I can't remember. Padding is equal to, it really, I know it's different on different browsers, so did that increase? Nah. Okay, let's just focus on the submit button and the text buttons, the text areas for now. Okay, so let's say, for example, I just want to target this button here, and I don't want to target the inputs themselves. I just want black here on the actual button. I could do that by selecting the attribute, which is button, like so. Input attribute is button. Whoops, hang on a minute. It's type equals, sorry. Again, this is me being absolutely shattered. Nope. Does it have? Come on. Hang on. Is it a button or is it submit? It's a submit. That's why it's not even the right attribute. There we go. Got there in the end. So this is targeting this particular input, which is a submit. It's not targeting these text boxes at all. Okay. So if I was to create an input up here, and let's say, for example, I wanted to have a background color, and set this background color to green, hit save, it's going to apply this background color on all of the input, on all of the text boxes, as well as the input, and the input is going to, as well as the submit button, sorry, and this submit button is going to have a 2 pixel border. There we go. See, that's green, that's green, that's green, that's green, and that's green, and that's got a black border. We can also adjust the color. It's looking really proper garish now, isn't it? Like some sort of some sort of rave is going on with this CSS back in the old HTML4 days. let's say, for example, I want to change the color to be white. So this time we're going to use just the text white. Let's refresh. So that's white now, and that's white. But let's say we want to change this to be have the background color of red. There we go. There's other things that we can do as well. I showed you the border here, but we can also do really clever things with rounding of the borders. Let's see if we can play with that as well. So we would do border radius. Now this is an interesting one to demonstrate. What we do here is we put in a value. So for instance here, let's do 6 pixels. And notice I'm skipping over the actual measurement part here. That that again is a whole different tutorial that I could give about the various different measurements, pixels, EMs, rems, all of this stuff. But notice here that this is now curved by 6 pixels. It's curved. I can change this. Let's say, for instance, I want to do 200 pixels. Now this is going to go nuts. There we go. See, it's all on itself now. Let's knock that back down to 6. Oops, there we go. But I haven't touched any of these because I am targeting the input where it has a type of submit. Cool. Okay, so with border radius, there's something else we can play with. We can also play with the specific parts of the corners of the border. So for instance, we could do border radius bottom left, top right. You see all of these here? So let's do bottom left radius of 0. Now this is going to throw an error here because it's not an error, it's a warning, because we've declared that all corners of the border must have a 6 pixel radius. However, the bottom left radius of the border must have 0. If we were to refresh the page, you can see that now has a straight edge, and yet and these 3 corners are curved. The reason why we've got this error or this warning here is that we're basically overwriting the rule above, and really that's not good code, to be honest. So if we were to replace it, the way we've replaced it now is we've targeted each of the corners of the of this input, and all the corners, which is 6, 6, 6. This one here is 0. So this is the bottom left. And if I was to change this one here, we'll have some alterations too. So let's save that. So that's the first one. So that's the top left, top left and bottom left. So you can play around with this and alter which corner you want to focus on. You can, of course, as SlayerDarv has rightfully mentioned, is let's say, for example, we wanted to do that, but more in a sort of a verbose way. Then we would say like bottom 1, 2, 3, 4. There we go. So let's get rid of this one for a minute. Let's change this to be top left. Let's change this to be bottom right. And also change this to be top right. And let's increase this to be, say, 6 pixels. This one to be 6 pixels. And top left, top right, sorry. Beg your pardon, top right here. Okay. Hit save, refresh the page, and there we go. So the edges have changed now. We're on the opposite side. But notice that we have these underlines. I'm using PHP Storm here. It's seeing that we can actually inline all of this as the inline as I've just demonstrated. So if we clicked on this, there we go. So this is the left, and then these are the right sides. So left, left, and right sides, as you can see here. Cool. Okay. Just gonna grab some more of my juice. Now you can actually go quite granular with certain things, with classes, for example. Let's say, for instance, I wanted to have complete and utter control. I'm going to show you something that is pretty nonsense at the moment, but it'll just give you an idea as to the classes. If we were to create a class here, and we had border, let's do BR0. Okay, so border right 0, border right 6. Border bottom, border top right, bottom right 6. Bottom left is, say, I don't know, 4, and bottom, so let's do BBL for BTL, say 10. Okay. And it is BTR, BBR, and BBL. Yeah, that'll do. I kind of understand that. Let's grab this for a minute, go up here, paste this all just down there for reference. So we want to do border top right 0, which will give us the border radius, border top right radius of 0. You see what I'm going to do here? We can do R6, which is border bottom right, and this is going to be 6 pixels. And then we can let's just copy that for a minute. Well, no, let's just, what's the next one? Dot R6. That's what I've already done. Sorry, BBL 4. Border bottom left. Oops. Left radius, and that's 4 pixels. And we'll do another one. Which is border top. And this one's 10. So it's not properly, I haven't properly sorted out the acronym here, but whatever. So this is border top, top left radius of 10. There we go. Okay. So this is going to apply all of those 4 to this class, to this element, because we're supplying these 4 classes to this one single element here. So let's get rid of this for a minute, and then let's hit save and go back into the page and refresh. So we can now see that this is all, so you've got completely different borders here. And also, let's say, for example, we want to do, let's bring that back into line. BG green, okay, BG green. Background color of green. Okay. Let's start applying some of these styles all over the place. So, for instance, here with the input, we can do class. We can do BBL4. We could do BG green, and we can do BBL4. Sorry, BBT. Let's do that one 10. All right, let's hit save. Let's hit refresh. Can you see? We are now playing around with this input. And I tell you what, let's do a different color because we've got this is always green. So let's change this to be purple. There we go. And I need to change this as well. Hit save, refresh. There we go, that's purple. And if I was to apply the purple CSS class as well, the BG purple one, to this legend as well, so we've got my details, and then we do purple like so. It's not going to apply it because we're already applying the my details one at the top here, and we've got this set to black. But if I was to remove that, that should be purple. Now there's all sorts of different things that we can do with things like margins and padding and making elements to different colors and you know, we haven't even discussed floats and grid and flexbox. You know, there's so much more to this that it just creating a garish screen like this is just the start. Let's go back to the documentation a minute, because there was something else I wanted to demonstrate. This is it. This is the pseudo class selector here. The specified elements, but only when the specified state is e.g. being hovered over. So here we've got a hover. This selects a, but only when the mouse pointer is hovering over the link. So what have we got on this form that we can use for that example? Well, if we went back to the form here, you see that we've got this button here. Now this button, if you can see my cursor, it doesn't actually turn into any kind of hover state. There's no change to this button whatsoever at all. So let's see if we can do that. So again, I just want to focus solely on this input, but I want to focus on this input when it's on the state of hover. And we can do this by putting in a colon like so, and then hover. Okay, now it's by default, because of the way it cascades, it's going to use these two CSS rules based on the fact that it isn't hovered. It's just going to use those. But we want to change the background, for example. Let's say if we want to do background color. Let's change this to be, is there a, yes, there is a maroon. So let's go back to here. Let's refresh the page. And can you see when I hover over this, this changes color. If I come off of this, so over here, it's still red. But if I go over there, it's now maroon, and then we come back. We can also change the color, of course, of the actual text. So let's say we wanted to change the color to something like yellow, for example. So if we refresh, that changes to yellow. Cool. Now I won't talk too much about the padding or the margins, because with that, you know, I really need to discuss the box model. When I said CSS, there's a lot to it. There's loads. So I mean, the box model is worth probably a whole series on itself, because you got to talk about borders and margins and things going inside and outside and so forth, and all of that jazz. But if I wanted to adjust the padding for this, we would use the padding CSS. Let's just do this. This is going to make this horrible. But let's do this just on the hover state. So padding, let's do, I was going to say 100 then. Let's do 30 pixels. Okay, this is going to really mess up the page. Boom! So on hover state, this submit button actually changes its height and width because I've adjusted the padding. And what I've done here with the padding is I have adjusted the padding from the center of the element up to the edge here. So from this point upwards, padding of 30 either side. Much like with the border, I can adjust specific size if I wanted to. The margin is outside of the box model and goes to the parent element, but you know, again, we won't touch on that at this stage. But yeah, so this is an example of how you can really screw up a page. The hover state, I should say, isn't just strictly speaking just for this input. We can also do hover states for other ones too. So for instance, let's do an input where the type is equal to text, yeah? And we want to do this as hover, and we want to change the background color to, let's say, white, and we want to change the color to, say, black. All the zeros. So refresh. Can you see that's changed? And that's changed. So I can actually type in here and I come out of this. Cool. Now, this isn't changed because this is a mobile number. This has the type of tel. So if I wanted to do that, then I would do something along the lines of this, where I would have a comma, and then I would have input type is tel. Now that you can also have an or statement in the attribute selection as well. So here's the tel there. So I said I would teach CSS, but I didn't say I would teach it in a way that that creates nice, pretty websites. We have literally only scraped the surface. Like there's so much more. And I do feel like I'm not doing it any kind of justice whatsoever. CSS, it's such a complicated. Let's see, there is a selection here where I can actually show you all of the syntax. Where was that? See, that's the box model and margin collapse containing a block. Then we've got the grid elements and so forth. Yeah, Slayer Darth is exactly right there. CSS is so easy to get wrong. So easy to get wrong. And to be honest, we've only been dealing with a hierarchy of two elements, essentially, really. Well, no, we've done more with this. But with the previous lesson, with this one, we only had a UL and an LI. Imagine if this was nested to so many levels where you had a UL, LI, and so forth. It's an example here is, say, drop-down menus. They used to have drop-down menus done in such a way like UL, LI, and all of that lot. That is, yes. Yeah, I will definitely do that. I don't think I've got enough time for tonight's stream to do that, but Slayer Darth is mentioning show different types of selectors. So there's plus, there's tildes, there's the right arrows, etc. Hey, Yabba-dabba-dub. Thank you for following. How did I get an Intellij license? Well, I'm a freelancer. I bought it. So I bought it. I have had one free before because I did. I won that in a raffle at a conference I went to. But I have purchased PHP Storm and PyCharm because I do a bit of Python as well. And I've got WebStorm on here as well. So yeah, that's how I got it. I purchased it, but then I do this for a living, so it's an expense. It is quite expensive, mind, but it's certainly worth it. So yeah, there's loads to talk about here, but unfortunately I'm just running out of time, and I can't cover all of them. Cover all of these. There's specificity. I can't even say it. Inheritance, and obviously the cascade. And then the big one, media queries. Whoa. Media queries is crazy, and if you know shorthand properties as well, that can save a lot of time and a lot of code. Let's take a look at animation. So if you're ever stuck for something to learn, if you think you know all of CSS, take a little look at animation. Check this out. You can do this in CSS. Nuts, isn't it? Absolutely crazy. So CSS loading bars. And loads to do here with the syntax. Here is some more examples. So here's a sort of a light beam going across. There are certainly some accessibility issues and the specifications. Something I should say before I go, excuse me, is that the specifications are constantly improving, and let's code snake in CSS. The specifications are constantly being reviewed and changed and updated. It used to be the case that with CSS it was like level 1, level 2, level 2.1, and so on and so forth. Now it's slightly more modularized than it was before. So here you can see a working draft, and essentially you can look at the specifications that are in play and see if they're going to be, accepted or declined, or when they're coming out, and all of this stuff. And each CSS rule has this sort of mapping based on what browser supports it. When you get into animation, there's also like the JavaScript animation events and the API here as well. So yeah, there's loads, absolutely loads. Slayer Darth is mentioning, I've got a CSS book PDF, but it's from when it was IE 8. Yeah, you did say 8 was king. Yeah. You should also check whether a CSS property has a widespread support for browsers you need to target. Definitely. So as a freelancer, one of the questions I often ask is, what browsers do I need to support? And it's crazy, but there are some clients that I've had that have required IE6 support. Obviously not recently. I think my last one was about a year and a half ago, something like that. Dear. Yeah. So legacy support is definitely something that we as developers need to understand and perhaps use. It's probably about 2 years, two and a bit years actually, since I touched the old IE6. Oh dear, that was difficult times if you were a front-end dev. But yeah, look at the complexities of all of this stuff. This is crazy. And then, of course, you can hook into WebKit, and you can also adjust keyframes. This is RGBAs, as I mentioned, so red, green, blue, and alpha channels. So CSS on the face of it might look easy, but actually it's proper difficult. It really is. Or at least I find it a struggle. Oh, and don't get me started on emails. Trying to create email templates that work in all email clients is so tricky. So tricky. Right. So we're coming up to the top of the hour, which is basically time for me to go to bed. You should do a HTML email series. If I wanted to go mad, then I might do that. My beard might get more grey hair if I started to do an email series in HTML. Blimey. Slayerdath is saying I just use MML because I don't know how to do complicated HTML email layout in HTML alone. Yeah. The thing is, it's like playing whack-a-mole. You think you've got it in one. You think you've got, Outlook and Gmail done, and then you go and use something completely different, and then that fails. And so you have to then alter the code, and then you have to go through, again, Outlook and Gmail, and there's always going to be some issue. My recommendation is to use another service like MailChimp. Or double your hourly rate, because you're going to need some time off afterwards. Anyway, thank you ever so much, everybody, for joining. I do appreciate it. And I will be back on Sunday, where we are going to be tackling some PHP, possibly some Gatsby, and I reckon some Cucumber as well. If you're into testing, we're going to be testing some code using Cucumber, and it's going to be a PHP API. So thank you ever so much for watching. I'm going to say goodbye. I'm going to say good night. Thank you. See you soon. Cheers. Bye-bye. Happy coding, everybody.